Today we're going to talk about some of the warning signs of Alzheimer's. Hi, it's me, Linda Burhans, the gal who cares for the caregivers with love, laughter, and lessons learned. Many times people contact me or come to a support group and they say, I don't know if my loved one has Alzheimer's. These things are happening, that things are happening, but I'm really not sure. So these are some tips from the Alzheimer's Association that you could look for, some signs to look for. One of the first signs you will see is memory loss that disrupts daily life. Coming to the point where I can't find my keys, I can't find where I put things, I'm not sure what the date is. And I'm not saying when you leave something somewhere and you can find it later or you can retrace your steps and get it, that's one thing. But if they cannot find it at all, they don't have any idea, that's something to think about. That's not just regular then forgetfulness. The other one is changes in planning. So all of a sudden now they can't follow a recipe anymore, where they used to be able to just read the recipe and make the dish. They can't really balance their checkbook. The mail just gets opened, or it doesn't even get opened. It just sits in a pile. That would be another thing to look out for. When it still gets to the point where they're having difficulty with familiar tasks, a simple task like writing a grocery list and going to the grocery store, all of a sudden they can't do that anymore. Or remembering what's on television. If they watch a certain show every day and all of a sudden they find out they're not sure when that show is on, what day that's on, or even maybe what day of the week it is. That also leads into confusion with time or place. Sometimes people have told me that their loved one drove somewhere and then when they came out, they really couldn't find their car. They really weren't even sure what parking lot it was in. Then they get in their car and they drive a few blocks and all of a sudden they're looking around like, where am I? I'm not really sure where I am. So you want to look out for that a lot. If they're driving, you want to drive with them and see if they're having that, because you know what's going to happen. They're probably not going to tell you, because nobody wants to have their driver's license taken away. If they have some vision problems, all of a sudden if there's vision problems, other than their regular vision. So of course we always want to take our loved ones to the eye doctors, because a lot of things are just visual problems. But if you find out, even though they do have their current prescription, and the doctor says this is the current prescription for them, but they're not seeing things clearly, their depth perception gets a little bit different. They'll many times be slipping and dropping things. Instead of putting it right on the counter, like on the center of the counter, it's more towards the edge of the counter because of that whole perception. Okay, next is problems with words in speaking or writing. I know with my mom had dementia. She stopped writing altogether. She didn't want to write anything. I think it was just too confusing for her. So she had stopped reading, and I didn't understand. She had always read books all the time. And all of a sudden, she had stopped reading. She just couldn't focus the words. She just couldn't get it. She never told me that. We would go into a restaurant. She'd give me the menu. You're my concierge. You take care of it. She never said she couldn't read. But when I look back on things now, I know she couldn't read. So that's another thing to pay attention for. Because at that time, I didn't even know what the heck I was looking for. What we said a little bit earlier too about misplacing things or losing the ability to retrace their steps. If they misplace something or in a very strange place, like if you find the keys to the car in the refrigerator, or you find the spatula for the pancakes in the bedroom drawer, that's something to look out for. Decreased or poor judgment. Someone that was always very stable and very on guard, was always, all of a sudden they're not making good decisions. They're maybe spending money they don't have. Maybe they're giving donations to charities because they don't even realize they're doing it. Please make sure you look through their bills and things, because what happens many times with a person with Alzheimer's or dementia, they get the mail and there's the mail asking for a donation for something, and they don't realize that they've already donated this month, or that they even wrote a check maybe the day before as a donation. I've had caregivers tell me that the bank called and said, Mom's account is overdrawn, She said, why? How could that possibly happen? And then she went to the bank and looked into things, and her mother had given over $800 in donations that month. So that's another thing too. And there also are credit cards that you can get specially for seniors where they can't make donations on them. So that might be another thing to help keep them safe. Withdrawal from work or social activities. All of a sudden you're going to find out that they stopped going to certain social things they used to do. I know my mom stopped going to her church meetings. And that was really strange because she really loved her church meetings. So if they stop doing those things that they regularly do, whether it's bowling or a church meeting or a sewing club or just going out to lunch with their girlfriends, if you find out that they're kind of isolating themselves, because many times they do that too because they still can't have a good conversation or because they can't see clearly. And then if all of a sudden you see a lot of change in moods or personality. Somebody that was always a go-getter, was always out there doing things, and all of a sudden they're just sitting around. They don't really want to participate. Somebody that was always pretty easygoing is now being angered on things that you think are so simple, but they're probably so serious to them. So these are just some tips to look out for. The most important thing is to pay attention. Pay attention. Because you know what? Many times we see all the pieces of the puzzle right in front of us, but we don't want to put the puzzle together. We don't really want to see the full picture. And it's most important that you do that, because when you do that, it's better for you and your loved one. So tune in next week for another tip sponsored by Art and Quartz, where all they do is memory care. And have a delicious day.